So yeah, this is just gonna be a big hollow body bucktail fly. Works really well for a wide variety of predatory species. I throw them for pike a lot, bass, things like that. They're pretty durable. You can have the fish beat the snot out of them and they just keep kicking. And they push a lot of water, so it's a good one to get predators' attention. The very first thing you gotta do to start with these guys, because you're gonna be cranking on it, is you gotta give a good base of super glue just on the, the shank of that hook. And then we're gonna use gel spun thread in a 200 denier because you can yank on it and it's not gonna snap on you. And give yourself a really solid base of thread right pretty much back to the hook point right there. Solid wrap and a good base of thread because you're going to be pulling pretty hard on these. And then, so the very first thing that we're going to do is I've got some Chinese saddle hackle here in white, and it's going to kind of be the end of the tail. So you're going to pull off all that extra fuzz, let her go so that you've just got the quill kind of exposed back here. And it's just a lot easier to tie in and keep it in the direction you want it to be. So we're gonna do 4 of these. So we'll just kind of tack them in place here. There's 1, there's 2. And we're gonna go 2 on each side. So 4 total. And that's gonna be the end of your tail. And what that's gonna do is come back and make the taper end at a happy place. Chop up these quills. And then secure them all in there, and then go back. So then we've got some silver flash to throw in here. Maybe about, let's see, what do we got here? 4 strands. And what I normally do is I'll tie about half of it in on one side. Secure it just so it goes barely past the tail feathers you just tied in there. I'm going to do it again on the other side. It's easy to use too much material on these flies and overcrowd them, so just use your stuff sparingly. I'm going to wrap forward. Okay. So there's your nice flashy tail. Then you're going to get a white bucktail. Pick the nice straight fibers if you can, find them. When you're picking bucktails, try and pick bucktail that actually has, decent fibers. Like this is actually really nice and long. So be selective about the materials you're purchasing. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab it up top here because these are super long, and I'm actually gonna pull those out and add them back in because these flies are all about how your taper ends overall. So each step you wanna make sure that it's gonna have a nice taper to it like that so that the overall fly is very streamlined. So take your judge that you want it to go just about maybe an inch before the tail ends right there. So then we're going to grab it and chop it off. So you end with a nice hard edge there, like that. And then the first one, I tie in facing backwards. The rest of them are going to tie in It's called reverse tying, where they're actually going to be sticking out this direction and then we force it back, and it's going to give it more volume. But the first one is just going to kind of cover these up so that when those big mean fish grab it, they're not just ripping the feathers out, they're grabbing the bucktail instead. So when you place this on, what I normally do is I kind of force it around the hook shank so that you get a nice even wrap of this. So I'll lay it on top and then kind of let it fall over and work itself around the whole body of the fly. You're going to do a loose wrap to secure it and then roll it again. So you really get those fibers placed in a nice even zone. And then you're going to crank on it. Give it a few good wraps. And that's going to flare that bucktail out. And the whole time you're making these flies, you really want to pay attention to the taper. And you don't want to pull so tight that these fibers just fly out. And you don't want to pull so tight that you chop your hair. So there's a happy medium there. And it just comes with kind of playing with the thread you have and the hooks you have. Now you come in and you trim all this excess forward hair away. And this is where the rotary vices are really nice. Now anything that's going to eat this is going to have teeth. So it's pretty imperative that you add super glue to each one of these steps, because that's going to lock all these fibers in place. It's going to really keep everything where you want it. So each time you tie something in, I'm going to add just a little bit of glue in there, and then you're going to wrap it forward and secure all that stuff so it's not going anywhere. So that's that's basically your tail and the bucktail tied in. So now if a fish bites this, he's going to have his teeth around that instead of ripping all the feathers out of the back, but you still get all the motion of those feathers kicking around and giving it a little more. So what I'll do next is we're going to add probably 3 different layers of bucktail in here in 3 different portions. And in between each one, we're going to use this stuff that's called polar chenille. And this is UV polar chenille, and it's gonna, pop and react to the UV light a lot more, like all these white, should react pretty well. So this is gonna be a bright, shiny fly that's gonna get some fish's attention. So we're gonna use silver. And now this all has a direction. If you kind of look at the thing, it slicks back like this. So you wanna grab it and secure this guy in. And then we're going to pin it back in our little material holder. Let it hang out there for a second, because what we're going to do is we're going to move forward maybe, what is that, a ½ inch? And leave about a ½ inch of space in there. And then we're going to tie another clump of bucktail in, but we're going to have it facing forward, and we're going to reverse tie it. And then, well, you'll see. So we're going to grab another section of the white. Not a lot. It's really, like I said, easy to use too much material in these flies and kind of overcrowd everything. And then I'm going to grab the long ones, add them back into the taper in the zone I want them, so we're not wasting material. Then I'm going to pinch at the zone I want and pull the shorties out, toss them. And we're going to test our length before we cut it. And I'm going to want it about there. So, scissors. And what the bucktail does is it's going to really hold that fly open and give it a lot of volume. So this is going to be my top clump. One of the easier ways to do it is do it in halves. So the bottom and then the top. So I'm going to do this on the top and then flip it. So we're going to secure it. Then we're going to get another little clump here. And do that one more time. And if you do it in half and half, it's just easier to control where it's going and how much you're using, and you can make sure you cover 360 of the fly with the color and the material you want. Same steps. Stack it up, taper it, measure it so it's the same length. Trim it, measure twice. We're gonna flip it and add the bottom. Always remember to check your whole fly, because it's really easy to forget that this half of your fly exists. And then when you pull it out of the vise and you look, half of it looks great, the other half is ugh. So double check that you're adding this evenly all the way around and you're moving it so it's even and it's covering the whole fly. Because once you do this and you tension it, it'll flare out and then it's more tough to move and control. So we're gonna go and secure that. And then all these small fibers in here, the excess, we're gonna go ahead and trim away. And it helps to kind of keep a little tension on your thread so that nothing really moves. Okay. Hit it with some glue so it's not going to move. And then we're going to wrap it and secure it all so you can wrap it back and make sure all of that is not going anywhere. So now we have this space right here, this kind of void space. And that's where your Polar chenille comes in. So now what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this forward while we're palmering this back, just like you would if you were, you know, putting hackle on a woolly bugger. Just pull each one back, lay the next wrap down, pull it back. And bucktail tends to be pretty translucent when you're using a sparse amount like this. So the silver is going to shine through and it's going to kind of give it like an undertone of flash. And these flies really, they look cool when they're dry, but man, they look really good when they're wet and being pulled through the water column, because they pulse and they move a lot of water and they get those predators' attention. So we're gonna wrap right up to that bucktail. You can use your brush too to kind of make sure everything's back. So I'm gonna do one more. And then we're gonna secure it. Trying to keep all those fibers back. And I tend to go 2 on the inside of my material and then 2 on the outside of my material, so the thread actually pinches it together and kind of locks it in place. Trim off your excess. So now there's 1,000 different tools for this next step. My favorite is this. The outside of a Bic pen. So it's hollow on the inside. What you do is you just put it right on the eye of that hook right there. You press back and it's going to push that bucktail back and force it back to where you want it. So you can pull it and that's going to help it stay back. Just like that. And just work it back, because the more you pull it back, better it's going to get. Advance your thread forward a fair amount, and the bucktail is going to slide out like that. We'll push that back again. And what really makes a big difference and actually helps is these little hair clips, like you can buy at Rite Aid and stuff. So you'll push this back and you'll grab that material with one of these hair clips, just like this. And ta-da! So now, I'm going to use my hand at first, and then we'll use that later. So you're going to bring that back, and then create a dam of thread in front of that, forcing that bucktail back. And the more of a dam you make, the more it's going to push that bucktail back. And you can still kind of manipulate it and make sure that it goes nice and even, because we want it facing backwards. So I'm going to add a little glue to either, yeah, right there. And we're going to make a nice dam of thread. Stopping every now and then to check our angle. Kind of make sure it's back where we want it. There it goes. That's what I was looking for, right there. So you got a nice even taper going back now, and it should be puffing out slightly, because when this gets wet, it's gonna pull through the water, and that's gonna pull down, and then it's gonna pulse back like something's swimming. So again, glue on this guy so it doesn't move, it doesn't go anywhere. Advance your thread forward, securing all that. Then all you're gonna do is repeat those steps. So we're gonna do polar chenille again. Tie that guy in. We're gonna make this one a little shorter of a section. So maybe a 1/4 inch this time. Then we're gonna add a little more bucktail. There's our top. Roll it around so it's even on the top. Gonna flip it. Ooh, don't slide off. There we go. Gonna do one more small section on the bottom. Same thing. Make it taper as you want. And sometimes if you roll it, it gives you a better taper quicker, because it kind of moves all the fibers and into place like that. So we're going to check the length. Give it a hard edge. We're going to add the bottom. Of course, the dog's going to start barking. So that's, make sure it's even. Then we're going to crank it down, secure it. It should kind of flare out there. Make sure you have enough in all even ways, you know, kind of sticking where you want it. Just like that. And really lock her down. That's why I like the GSP, because you can crank on it way too tightly. So now we're going to trim this. And then we're going to palmer that silver forward. Give it some more flash in there. Okay. Probably 2 more. That looks good to me. I'm going to secure it. So 1 on the left side of it, 2 on the left side of it, 1, 2 on the other. Chop that. And then really secure that in place. Grab our super specialized tool here. I'm going to force that back again. Now you'll kind of see that taper starting to happen. And the fly at this point will really start to kind of pop out and emerge. So you can force these back, you know, as much as you want, but they're still going to want to flare forward, and that's why we reverse tie, because it naturally wants to pulse out. And that way, ooh, come back. So here's where we're going to use the clips, if I can actually make it work. Just like that, to hold all your material back. Keep it out of the way. Check your taper. Add a little glue so that nothing slides around. It's also really easy to crowd the head on these, so you gotta know when to stop. There we go. So that's good right there. And now you kind of start to see it emerge. You start to see that thing pop out. So now on the head of this, what I'm going to use is some dubbing. I like the Senyos for this because it's long fibers. So you can use, you know, you get a lot out of a little, and it just carries the color a long way. So that's what I like to buy for this, is a Senyos laser dub. So what we're going to do, since we're getting close to the eye there, is we're going to give this a green back with some olive bucktail and then a white underbelly. So this time for the bucktail that I'm adding, I'm going to go ahead and add in olive on the top for that small portion. And again, try and find the straight fibers, like the ones that aren't kind of bent out. Just makes your fly look a little more streamlined. Check your length. Now if you have too much, like I just said, I probably grabbed a little too much on this. What you can do is roll your taper between your fingers, grab it up high, and then anything that's shorter than this is going to fall out. So you just kind of pick it out of the bottom there, and that eliminates some of that volume that you didn't want. And I'm not going to add any more of the polar chenille in here, because then we're going to go ahead and add some big eyes up front to give them a target, because for the most part, predatory species seem to want to shoot for those eyes to eat things head first in case it's got spines. So what we're going to do is advance that thread just a few wraps there. I'm going to add a little glue because it helps secure everything in each one of the steps. I'm going to put this in, secure it. Glue myself together. Get it locked in there. There's your top color. So I'm going to switch for the white and do the bottom. Check your length. Flip your fly. And then add the bottom color in. And then secure. So now go in, kind of trim that up and clean it up. Okay. Add a decent amount of glue on the back here. So I'm going to wrap all the way back and really secure all that. Now on this one, I'm going to push this back, splitting the colors, top and bottom. So you get that olive going right down the spine. Now I'm not going to advance my thread forward. I'm going to take it right here. I'm going to pin this down, just like that, and pin it in place. right there. Now, before I loosen any tension on this thread, I do like to add a little more glue again. The more super glue you add in these, the more bomber they're going to be. There we go. Give that super glue a second. Trim these little stray fibers out. Now that little bulge actually helps me in a second. It's going to hold a little bit more of that dubbing out. And I got pretty close to crowding the eye on this, but it's not terrible. If the fish cares, I don't want to fish for that fish anyways. So you got that. Now we're pretty much going to use that little recess right there where the thread is kind of bulging out that bucktail, and we're going to add the dubbing in. So I'm going to do green on top, and what I do is as I'm pouring it out, I try and kind of stack it, and then you're going to pull and stack all that dubbing, making it go the same direction, kind of over and over, rolling it, because you want a good taper on this too. And it's really easy to use too much dubbing too. You just want this in there for color and a little bit of movement. This is probably double the amount, so I'm going to split this in half and then do it in 2 stages. So here's the back portion. And then, so olive's going to be on top. So I'm going to tie half, fold it back, go right in front. And then when you hit that, it should splay out. And now the next one we add, we're going to go up in front of the eye. So you need that little tiny bit of space right there. And this is where you got to be cautious with your use of materials. So now we're going white Senyo's laser again. We're going to do the same process. We're going to take that laser dub, going to stack it so all the fibers are laying the same direction. Roll it for the taper, stack it again, get that nice edge. I'm going to flip it this way. So then we're going to lay it on. Pull that green back so we don't screw it up. And secure it. And in front. So now again, hit it with glue. Just right in the front there. Try not to get it in your dubbing or else it just ruins your dubbing. And don't worry about how ugly this looks up front right now, because what we're going to do is we're going to add a big old eyeball to it. And it's going to cover up a lot of that. You just want to make sure that you get those colors evenly split there for right now. And they're going to go ahead and advance that thread forward. Then we're going to do that process one more time. We're going to take that dubbing, stack it, taper it, and add it. I'm going to do the white before I pull it back this time. Boom. Secure it. Then you're going to fold that white back. Secure it. Fold that green back. Okay. So there we go. Now, I just hitch big flies like this, mainly because I'm going to use a ton of Solarez resin in here, and we're going to build up a nice hard head on this thing so that, I mean, I'll throw these for pike and they've got about 700 teeth, and it takes them a while to break through these heads. So there's that guy. Now what we're gonna do is go ahead and brush it. Just kind of get it nice and even, get that taper and that color back there like we want it. Because then, sort of pull this bad boy back, all that extra material off there. I'm gonna take the eyeball, a little bit of super glue on the back, so really tack it in place. And now I'm gonna add that eyeball just behind the eye of that hook there. I'm gonna make it end right behind the eye of that hook. Pull this back, lay the eyeball right behind the eye of that hook, and then just kind of press it on, and I'll just hold it there for a second. Just like that. Here's the other one. That one?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. So then here's this guy. I'm gonna add this one. Same thing. Right behind the eye of the hook. Go like that. So there we go. Now you can take this fly and go finish it right, or fish it right now, as is. I prefer to put Solarez heads on it and build up a head of resin in between here, in between the eyes, around the eyes, and then I use the bone dry to really secure it all and make it just crystal clear. Because yeah, there's no substitute for that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the Solarez medium viscosity resin, and I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna hold that dubbing on the head and I'm gonna push it down in between the eyes, kind of with my middle finger, and then I'm gonna let gravity do what gravity does and move this down. And make sure you feel both sides of those eyeballs, because you got to get the resin in there. And the best part about this UV resin is you can control exactly the taper. Like if the taper wasn't perfect before, now you can control the exact taper. So if I let this go, it's going to bulge up. If I hold it down and cure it, it's going to point it back more. So I want that happy medium of a little bit of tension. Then we're going to cure it. And it holds it right there. Keeps that down, kind of gives it a really nice streamlined look to it. So that was just filling in right between the eyes. I'm going to flip it. Do the same thing on the bottom, right between the two eyes where you kind of have a slight void space. We're going to pull that dubbing down. I'm going to add some. You can kind of force it in the dubbing, you know, make sure that it gets in there. And watch the eye. So again, if I let it go, it'll bulge back up. So it's almost like welding. You can tack it in place in the direction you want it. So double check your taper and everything. And then we'll just cure that right there. We don't even have to hold that one. So, again, you can stop right here and go fish it, but I like to take that medium viscosity again, and now what I'm gonna do is build up around this eyeball. I'm gonna add resin all over this eye. And what that's going to do is basically attach, well, it's going to make the whole head one instead of two eyeballs with some resin in the middle. Now we're going to add this resin all the way around. And what really helps with this is rotating your vise consistently and using the medium resin, because if you use thin, it's going to run a lot more. But again, you're going to have gravity helping you out here. So give it a generous coating all around the eyes and the whole head. Keep her spinning. Make sure you like both sides. Check that you've added enough. I'm going to add a little more to this eyeball because the other one's bulging a little bit. There we go. Now the more you rotate it, the more even it's going to get. And then when I cure this, I keep it spinning, so it stays nice and even. Now that entire head is one. So they can bite it, crush it, do whatever they want with it. So there's that. And then we take the bone dry. I'm going to take Solarez bone dry. We're going to add a decent amount just on the outside. You know, just give it a good painting as you rotate it because this stuff's super thin. But what it does is it keeps all that wax, the settling wax, from caking up. And it makes it super thin, or super clear. And we're going to cure that. And that's it. The very last step that you'll want to do is take it and rinse it in warm water. And what the warm water is going to do is it's going to pull all the bucktail and all the fibers back together, and it's going to hold it back. And then as it dries, it's just going to dry back in the taper that you want it to be, so that it's just that final step of making it finish in the shape that you want. But basically this right here, you can, as you pull it through the water column, it's going to pulse, it's going to get the attention. It's got the tail, it's going to kick around a little bit. Just enough flash, but you know, pretty natural looking pattern as far as baitfish colors go. But really effective for a wide range of species.